No. So let's stick with that then. Let's go with he's underappreciated and taken for granted.
Yeah.
Fair?
Not really, no. I mean, he's all NBA most years recently. I understand maybe it's a little more personal that he came in 6th for MVP voting for a regular season award, but I don't think that he's taken for granted. I think it's quite the opposite. I think especially us locally, but the national level too, look at him and go, this is one of the guys that's supposed to be the next face of the NBA after LeBron. This is one of the best players in the NBA. And so when you go through 7 games of a playoff run and he doesn't look like himself, which is really great, he's shooting poorly and the numbers back that up. It's not just the eye test, it's the stats test too. Then I think it's just saying you're not playing up to the standard that you've set for yourself previously. And so we're going to call that out. I think that's totally fair. That's not like taking advantage of someone, taking someone for granted. It's just saying he's not performing to the level that we've seen him perform before.
Okay. Do you think we take him for granted? Do you think Jayson Tatum is underappreciated? 617-779-7937. You can sound off there. Arcand, what'd you think of those comments from Missoula?
I thought they were very whiny. I think that Jayson Tatum gets plenty of adulation. He's like top 3 in jersey sales every single year. Like his fans, there's tons of fans in Boston and around who consider him one of the best players in the league. I think that that's ridiculous. The reason why he was getting a lot of crap is because he was averaging 21 points a game in the playoffs and hadn't really engaged that much, it didn't seem like, offensively. And that's something that I think, even though the Celtics are winning these games, people are noticing. And if it was Giannis doing that, if it was Luka Doncic doing that, if it was Devin Booker or Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic or any other superstar, they get that same kind of criticism. They get that same kind of critique. Jayson Tatum's not special, and he's also not, these other players I just mentioned aren't surrounded by all-stars at every position on their starting 5, more or less. So I think that, with Tatum, it's a little more, maybe, but that's dessert. That's what happens when you're, sorry, Mego, a super team, which I think the Celtics are, and that's why he's getting that additional scrutiny. But there's nothing wrong with that. He played better in the game. People notice. That's fine. That's the way it works.
And Tatum, to your point, you've made this point a lot. He's always been surrounded by all-stars and good talent. And so I look at it and I go, it's your 7th year. You've still never won anything. And if anything in Boston, we overrate you.
Which I've written before. It's okay. Like, you're on the timeline. Well, but it doesn't look great when Anthony Edwards was. Look, he's getting pants by Denver now, but was looking like the next big thing on the other side.
You're 7 years in, you haven't won anything. Like, of course, we're getting a little antsy about this. And, oh, by the way, we probably overrate you in Boston. We don't underrate you. We overrate you. I thought you were going to win the MVP, which Ryan laughed at. And I got to do some stupid freezing. What's it called again?
The Nordic Cycle.
Right. I got to do that because I overrated you, Tatum. We call you a top 5 player in this city. You're not. You're not a top 5 player.
Outside of the top 5 in MVP voting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're a top 5 player. Like, I've said that before. I thought you were going to do that. That's what I thought you were going to be. You're not. If anything, we overrate you. You're not underappreciated. We appreciate you too much. We expect too much out of you. And on top of that, we have to now say and get finger wagged for like, oh, he's underappreciated. Oh, we take him for granted. I don't think that. We've been very patient. It's year 7. They've won 1 championship basically in my lifetime. I'm being pretty patient here, but I don't want to sit here while he misses threes and misses jump shots and loses games to trash-ass teams like Cleveland or like who they lost to in round 1. And I have to look at it and go, wait a minute, what? You're losing to Miami? You're losing to Cleveland? And I complain about that, and now I'm the bad guy.
It just says he's a really great player that gets taken advantage of.
It's like, oh, great. Now I got to get finger wagged because I'm calling them out for losing games they shouldn't while Tatum misses jump shot after jump shot after three after three after jump shot. And now I'm the bad guy? That's stupid.
Well, they're just holding up a narrative that I don't think, I agree with you, it doesn't exist. Like, is it wrong to point out that Tatum's shooting overall has been way down compared to his previous playoff runs? Like, does that mean that you take him for granted? Because there's one thing to go, and I hear Gresh do this in the midday, quite frankly, where he goes, oh, they get mad if he doesn't score 30 a night. It's not about scoring 21 a night if you're moving it around and you're getting it to Derek White and you're getting it to Jaylen Brown and others around you. It's that you can't hit the broadside of a barn some nights. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That is the problem. And then we hear excuses coming out. Well, when they're setting screens, when he's the primary screen setter, look at the offensive production. Arcand, what was the stat on the other side that Cleveland had Saturday night?
Oh, yeah.
Almost the exact same thing.
The inverse of that, which was when Al Horford was guarding Donovan Mitchell on the pick and roll, they're averaging like 1.64 points per game, which would make it the best offense in the history of the world if it was just Donovan Mitchell against Al Horford.
Like, it's irritating to me because it presents it as like you can't even have any kind of constructive criticism or an observation about it. Otherwise, like, you're such a hater.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been inefficient, but my real issue is when's he going to take over a game? And so I would cite Donovan Mitchell in game 2. Donovan Mitchell was very passive in the first half of that game. He took it over in the second half. Tatum doesn't do that enough for my taste. I'm not saying he's never done it. He did it in game 6 against Milwaukee 2 years ago. I feel like we always have to cite these stupid games. He did it in game 7 last year against Philadelphia. So I'm not saying he's never done it. I don't think he does that enough. That's my real criticism of Tatum. He doesn't take over games, and the efficiency hasn't been there. But last game was a step forward. It's just now when he finally has a good game and plays a little bit better, still misses a majority of his shots, still 2 for 8 from 3, still coming off a game in game 2 they never should have lost, I have to be lectured about it. And then I got to hear Tatum after the game. And this is a longer clip, okay? So just bear with Tatum on this. This is longer than I usually allow, Ryan. Sir, I would never allow a phone call this long. I usually don't like clips this long. But I want to hear Tatum in his entirety on the disrespect that poor Jayson Tatum has had to deal with here these last couple of weeks.
Jayson, I know you try not to listen to the critics, but do you think that people don't kind of look at your overall game, your defense, your rebounding, your assists, and you kind of think you're disrespected in that aspect? People only are focusing on your shooting percentage, and does that bother you, and how do you react to it?
I think, I do. I respect you guys' job. I respect the guys on TV. I don't always agree with the things that they say, but, when they're fair and, they take emotion out of it, whatever way that they're leaning towards when they're fair, I respect it. You understand what the media has brought to our game and more eyes and more attention and how everybody has benefited from that. So, I wouldn't say I'd take it as disrespect, right? Like I said, I don't always agree with what they say, and maybe I feel like they're not watching everything else that I'm doing, but that's not my job to focus on that, right? Or, give it, any attention. My job is to be the best player that I can be for our team on any given night. I would love to make every shot I take, and I know I can shoot better, and I will. But at this time of the season, as long as we win and we're trending in the right direction, I know me scoring will come. I've done that plenty of times. So, I just try to impact the game in other ways and just dominate the game and not be defined as just a score.
Okay, so that last word is what I took issue with. And there's a lot in there. I really respect what you guys do after he laughs off the criticism and basically says nobody watches, channeling Peyton Pritchard from last week. Oh, you're casual if you don't see what Tatum's bringing to the game. But
that hurt my feelings.
That last line, shame on your son.
I know.
That last line about, I just want to dominate. That's my exact crazy. He's not dominating. Does he think he's dominating games? Does he think he's dominating even game 3? Do you think is that the word you would use? He dominated that game? I wouldn't use that word at all for him.
I thought Jaylen Brown was more dominant in that game than he was.
Mitchell's been more dominant.
Mitchell's dominated the games, but he's also...
But he has to.
He has to. I mean, he's the one taking most of the shots there. But Tatum's taking plenty of shots. He's just not making them as much, and his offense hasn't been going as well. I thought Tatum in that game, when he did that little Euro step, remember that? Mm-hmm. I was watching that. I'm going, where's this been? Where's his craftiness and sort of his slithery ball, moves to the hole? slithery moves to the hole with the ball is what I meant to say there.
Sure.
It's getting better the way you say it.
I'm trying. I just think that that was something that had been missing earlier on in the previous series in the first couple games of this one, and you saw it. You noticed the difference. I still don't think it was like a perfect Jayson Tatum game or anything like that, and he definitely didn't dominate the game. I don't think in any real way, but he's shown he can do it before. I liked in that answer when he's like, if I don't score, it's okay as long as we win. I agree with that. I think that's a good idea for a good philosophy for him to have. But I also think he's like, well, when you take emotion out of it, it's like it's Boston, Jason. No one's taking emotion out of it.
And what I don't like too is all the criticism was after game 2 when they lost.
Right.
And it's like it doesn't sound like he likes that either. He's like, well, as long as we win, I don't really care. Well, you didn't win, Jason. That's the point. That's why we were all jumping down your throat after game 2. You lost. I agree. I agree. That's when we should criticize.
Honestly, the bigger point, and this is something you've said before, Jones, that I agree with, is that you haven't won. Like I know that he had sounded like after game 2 he was kind of annoyed that it's like the media is out there expecting, and fans to some extent expecting them to sweep every team and to win every game in the playoffs. My take on that is absolutely not. I'm not like you where I sit here and go, Celtics in 4 every round. I understand they're going to trip up some games, but there's a difference between it getting down to the wire and just getting outperformed in the last minute, which we've seen with this team a couple times this regular season, and getting utterly embarrassed on your home court like they did in game 2.
Yeah.
All on effort, basically, because you're not rebounding and you're not getting back on defense.
Let's go to Patrick in Maine. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thanks for taking my call, guys. Love the show. Back to the Joe Mazzulla clown show. For him to point the finger at the fan base or the Boston media for us having the high expectations of Jayson Tatum, it's Jayson Tatum's fault that we have these expectations. He's shown us what we can do. And to point the finger at anyone other than Tatum for him not showing up in these big games is absolute BS.
Yeah, I just think there's so many players before Tatum. And now you could say all these players were unfairly criticized. And, like, I've been guilty of that. I was doing it with Jokic last year. But that just shows I'm consistent. Maybe I'm consistently wrong. But I am.
Maybe you're just mean.
Okay, maybe. But, like, until you win, that's how we're going to talk about you. That's how I talk about quarterbacks. That's how I talk about stars in the NBA. Because I do think they can singularly, in those two positions, a superstar in the NBA and a quarterback in the NFL, it pretty much is all about you. And so do you lead your team to victory? Yes or no?
See, here's what I'm going to say, though, because I can already, I don't even need to look at the text line. I can already know what some people are saying, which is, well, you just want ISO Tatum then? You just want ISO? No, it's not like there's one option of how you can make an impact on a basketball game. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't have, that he shouldn't get recognition for the rebounds and the assists and the defense that he can play at times. I just think it's okay to criticize the biggest stats that aren't there sometimes.
Yeah, and again, do I want him to play iso ball? Sometimes. I mean, I wanted to pick his spots. And I feel like Tatum has, and you can say now I want everything, but yeah, out of a guy who's an MVP candidate, I feel should be an MVP candidate, and one of the best players in the league, you have to know when to pick your spots. When do you take over a game and dominate, and when do you defer to your teammates? And I feel like he's been way too deferential and hasn't dominated, to use his own word. And so, yes, sometimes I do want ISO Tatum. Not all the time. At the end of some of these games, that's maddening. But sometimes you need to do it. Mitchell does it for Cleveland. He takes over games. LeBron will go ISO from time to time. Some of the best players in the league do that. You have to do that. Sometimes your team needs a bucket, and yeah, you got to go do it. You got to give the game what it needs. And that's my criticism of him.
Yeah, if the Celtics had won the championship last year or 2 years ago, then these early game losses wouldn't be a big deal. We wouldn't be talking about them so much, I don't think. And if they win the championship this year, we'll forget all about them. But they haven't, and they didn't. And that's why it's still a thing. That's why it's still sort of in the back of everybody's mind. And that's why it's, I think, hard for people to fully trust that this team's got what it takes to cross that bridge. I mean, you don't do it until you do it. And that's really what this is all about. That type of scrutiny does go out the window, though. I do agree with that. Once you win, once you've established that you can win a game or two here and there, not dominating in the regular season, dropping a game in the first round, like that's all just sort of stuff that you forget about. But when you haven't won, it just is a reminder of why you haven't.
So do we properly appreciate Jayson Tatum?